Hey everyone. Today we're taking a trip down memory lane, visiting Dead Space. And no, we're not talking about the remake. That's going to be part 2. Today we're going to be revisiting the original and then following up with that on the uniqueness that makes the remake, or the uniqueness that the remake will bring to the table, ideally iterating on what made the original so great. So first of all, let me just tell you, after replaying Dead Space after, 14 years, your nostalgia glasses, they don't need any cleaning. This game is exactly the way that you remember it. And I'll have some scenes, especially at the end, that you can watch through just to go and show and bring back that feeling. Because, oh my God, this game it makes you feel something that I don't think anything aside from some like Alien Isolation, have truly brought to the table in over a decade. It's incredible. Just like this clip right here. We had Rach play the start of the game, and you'll see how that how it impacted her.
What the hell was that?
Automatic quarantine must have tripped when the filtration system restarted. Everybody relax.
What was that?
Not sure.
No? I don't know. Something's in the room with us.
Jesus!
Come on.
Get the hell out of there!
The door's unlocked. Run! How do I go? How do I go? How do I go? Where? How do you run? How do you run? Shift!
Terrifying, though. Survival horror, it's coming back. We've got a lot of remakes on the table. Dead Space itself that just came out. We've got Resident Evil 4 that's coming out in a few weeks. And at this point, they're starting to go down other directions as well. We've got Sons of the Forest that takes isolation, but also using multiplayer and brings that to a whole new layer and level, especially iterating on such a phenomenal game already. The Forest, it really is. The new Amnesia, and the inevitable Silent Hill, which at some point will come. I don't know when it is. Kojima, please, for the love of God, get that Silent Hill out. I'm waiting for it since PT, but these things are coming. I think there's actually 2 Silent Hills on the docket. But we're calling this series Nostalgia Glass Reviews. We go through either a new or a trip down memory lane to visit a game that, previously was loved, just to go and see how it holds up today. We have a similar breakdown structure as always, covering some of the things that we would go through, but we're also going to skip out on a lot of it. We're not going to cover story. Everyone knows the Dead Space story, and everyone's playing the game right now. So we're going to be focusing more on the atmosphere, the things that truly make Dead Space unique, and the things that make it hold up 14 years later. We've got timestamps in the description, so please just take a look down there if you need to go or just want to peruse through and see specific parts of the video. Survival horror can be broken down into some categories. You've got ones like Outlast where they just, the way that they incite fear is they remove your entire ability or amnesia to fight back. It's a lot of the running, and they are great in their own rights. And then you've got ones that border on action survival and some that are kind of in between both, like Dead Space or Resident Evil. You can fight back, but there's a lingering dread in a lot of, throughout the game that keeps the pacing on point. So first up, how do games like Dead Space create fear in the player? And I think the answer is, among other things, and we'll break it down again, but it's variety and pacing. Yes, we know that lighting, sound design, map design all have influences over the reason why we feel that, that fear whenever we go through a new room, but we're not going to focus the conversation on that. I think that the root to what makes these games so incredible and genre defining is getting the variety and pacing correct. Variety, whether it be a game or a movie, can be something good or bad. Too much of an underdeveloped idea or misuse can hold a game back from greatness. And similarly, variety that is well implemented, well thought out, and is intentional is something that can make a genre-defining game, which is where I think Dead Space lands. It has the perfect balance between, for how it introduces multiple aspects of each layer of the game, whether it be combat or the lighting and the sound design. But on top of that, it gets pacing done perfectly. And we'll get into that in a moment. You know, when I replayed Dead Space, again, it's been 14 years since I played it last. I didn't jump back when the sequels came back in or came out. So it scared the living shit out of me when I replayed this game. I didn't think that it was going to have the same effect, and it absolutely did. So first up, variety in regards to the intentional level design, the Ishimura itself. You can't have levels for the sake, and this is going to be relatively ad hoc the way that we talk about it, but you can't have levels that don't make sense because it takes you out of the immersion. I mean, we all know that, but the Ishimura was something unique. For anyone who's watched Event Horizon, the Ishimura, at least for me, it reminded me of that movie. Every time, the people on the ship were moving through, you didn't know what was around the corner. And with Dead Space, this is something with the level design as well that makes it great, is that at the start of the game, you start progressing through in these close, confined quarters. As you're moving through, you're feeling these intimate experiences with the necromorphs, and you don't know what's going to be happening. But as the game progresses, they open up the level design. You get into bigger areas. The engineering bay is an actual bay. It's huge. And what do they do in that case? This is where the pacing comes in, but they start ramping up the way that they've got enemies thrown at you. And not just the same enemy, multiple different enemies. I'm looking at you, Callisto Protocol, for this one, because 6 enemies is just, it's not okay. You need more than 6 enemies, especially in 2023. For the love of God, at least make them unique and have some more. Because one thing that happens with this level design is that you've got a ranged feel of the interactions with each necromorph. And it keeps you feeling like you need to go in with intent of that next engagement, because you might have slashers running at you and you know that you can take them out by knocking out the limbs. But at the same time, you've got the, and I'm blanking on the name of them, the guys shooting all those spikes at you. Geez, not leapers. Just one of the other ones. Anyways, you know what I'm talking about. But they add dynamic, that variation in each one of the encounters. And the level design, it enables that. It is top notch, and one of the additions that really does complement in Dead Space, not just for the fear, but immersion itself for the level design, is that the beacon system that was added in late into the game's development cycle, and it's one of the best tools that's been added into a game, and I want to say a very long time. It's not invasive; it truly does. It's just chef's kiss. It's beautiful. So next on, variety in enemies. There's 18 unique enemies in the game. Bosses are included here, but each one with their own purpose that does set itself apart. Again, the way that they throw enemies at you at the start of the game is terrifying because they're intimate. These encounters, you don't want the necromorphs to get close to you. They have massive, they're literally swords on their arms. You don't want to get in close combat with these things, so you have to stay far away. But then what they do is, as this game progresses, you see more and more unique enemies coming to attack. And all it does, it's like it builds to this beautiful crescendo at the end of the game where you have the ability, but you're still scared as to what's coming around the corner. And it comes, and that's the way that the variation in enemies, along with the way that they throw the enemies at you, it continues to build that fear. That again, that unknowingness as to what's going to happen next. Some of them are reskins and changed attributes, but that's okay because again, they might take more hits, which again takes you away from if you're getting multiple enemies thrown at you. You're still freaked out. You're spamming that, your gun. You're throwing as much as you can. It's great, but the enemies in Dead Space should be studied by all other horror games. I mean, the point here with the necromorphs is they're so perfect and they fit the scenery and they're iconic. I'm not expecting every development to always have these types of enemies. I wouldn't want that, but it is so perfect the way that they're designed for what Dead Space is. Truly incredible, and still scary all the years later. I mean, playing this in 4K was truly a great experience. On to combat, and this is variety, but also pacing as well for combat. It's broken down into 4 categories. You got range, kinesis, stasis, melee, and environmental. Each are unique. You can abuse some mechanics like not upgrading certain weapons or purchasing or building certain weapons so that you get all the ammo for, let's say, your plasma cutter. But where's the fun in that? The best part about combat in this game and why the guns, you don't necessarily want to do that is they're all unique. Again, variety with intentional design here. First of all, they all kind of feel like they're part of the Ishimura. I mean, the railgun maybe is the only thing, but actually it still makes a lot of sense. The line cutter they're perfect iterations into the game, and there's no reason why, as a first playthrough, you just stick with the plasma cutter. Because they are unique, and they're fun to use. And that's something that this game gets so right. You feel that, again, that intimate feeling of the combat when it's one-on-one. But each one of the weapons adds, and they have their own utility to push you through and get further, get into the latter combat, examples that they throw you into with, like, the best Batman tool belt ever. Anyways, the combat in the game it's perfect. And the fact that you have the rotational system similar to RE4 keeps you walking slow. I love it. Good job. 14 years ago, you guys are still the best. It is, yeah. So why is it so great? And this is just harping back a little bit, pulling in some of the concepts that we've already talked about. But naturally, the game makes you want to stay away from necromorphs. Again, looking at you, Callisto Protocol. I don't want to get into an intimate setting with these creatures. Even Last of Us. You go and you look at the way that you interact with the clickers in that game, and Joel doesn't want to get near a clicker. But when he does, it's an intimate one-on-one encounter, and it's visceral. It gets you into it. But once you start repeating that too often, it takes you out. Just like a horror movie. If you watch a horror movie and they show you the beast at the start, and that's the whole point, you can iterate on that and have it as something that's, that's unrelenting. That's scary in its own right. And that, it's a great iteration if you're showing the beast all the time. But if you don't show the beast, or you show that your protagonist doesn't want to engage in close counters, that itself is scary. Necromorphs, or the mutated guys from Callisto, which I forgot what they're even called because they're not as memorable. You want to stay away from something with knives on its arms. It's as simple as that. Like if I were watching a horror movie, not to belabor the point here, but if I were watching a horror movie and it was Freddy Krueger, we're watching Nightmare on Elm Street, and the protagonists are constantly getting into Freddy Krueger's face, it kind of takes away the fear. And one of the reasons why they did that in latter movies was because they made it, there were some comical aspects of the fact that when they show Freddy more and the people aren't scared of him in his nightmares, they're getting closer. The whole aspect of getting close to your enemies, especially ones that are supposed to be, fearful, you're fearful of, it detracts from the scare factor. And it's something that they've done so beautifully in Dead Space, is maintaining the aspect of keep necromorphs away from you. That's it. That's all Isaac wants to do. He doesn't want to get slashed. So it's something that they did great, and it's a concept that it's not new. They did this with intent because, they're scary enemies. I won't belabor that anymore. Little breather here and for some ad-lib, which everything has been anyways, but levels enemies in combat. At the start of the game, you're scared. It's a new environment. You're being guided by a team that you think you can trust. By the midpoint of the game, and this is where we're talking about pacing, by the midpoint of the game, that, you've got some weapons as you become more comfortable. But when you feel more comfortable in this game, and this is what they do so perfectly and so beautifully, when you get more comfortable with your combat abilities, they throw more enemies at you and in with different variety. You have the range combat, so you're using the plasma cutter. You have the guys shooting the 3 little spikes at you, so you've got the line cutter as well that that you can use to take them out in one shot. Later, as you go down, if you've got the plasma cutter and a limited amount of ammo, some of them detach from one another, and if you shoot a bloater, you can't use 20 shots on a bloater when they explode. It's the variety in the enemies is complemented by the variety in the weapons, which is then complemented by the variety in level design. The pacing goes hand in hand with each one of these as it ramps up. the feeling that you go through in the game of becoming more combat aware, and also then being wondering what's around the corner because there's new enemies that require your own, different sets of skills to get through it. And then the kinesis that you can use for explodable items. Kinesis is also one of the best things in this game. I mean, they had the iteration of kinesis and stasis, which I love the separation of the two. But being able to go and throw the slasher arms at one another, it's so satisfying to see that happen. And it's another thing that, again, it adds to the tool belt of your utility and makes you more proficient. But it's also just an epic, epic way to approach your combat. If you have played Dead Space, by the way, or like any of the commentary on the game right now, please drop a like, a subscribe, or comment below. The whole point of this video is to hopefully incite a little bit of, memories about the game, especially if you have played it. And if you haven't played Dead Space, I hope that this, encourages you both to realize why the game was so great in the first place, and maybe get some content on what it looks like compared to the remake if you're going to be playing it later. So please drop that. We also play on Twitch. So this was all done live on Twitch and YouTube, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 8 p.m. to 12. And we play every week. So please keep the comments clean. And if you like any of it, again, throw the comment below. Plug over. This leads into the upgrade system. And it's something that I think is another iteration that is done beautifully in this game. I'll keep it short, and it's unique. Power cores are used to upgrade your suit, weapons, and or used to progress into hidden areas or side areas that have weapons, schematics, or any sort of ammo that's slightly randomized. The way that they have upgrade systems in this game is that you, as the player, get to make the choice, which, whoa, what a thought. We get to make a conscious decision as the player that impacts the way that we play. Great. You get to go and make a choice. Do I upgrade my suit, or am I powerful enough to go and continue trekking on? Or do I save some power cores to go into a side area that maybe has a schematic, or I need more ammo? And not only that, you get to make that decision, but the second area is the suit and weapon upgrades are not necessarily one-to-one with each power core upgrade. Sometimes you've got 2 power cores to go and get to the next upgrade, which talk about realizing for our generation, going back in 2008, but having a little bit of delayed gratification of having to save up 2 power cores. I know I might be looking into it, but almost every game today, you get a level, you get an upgrade. The fact that they added in some delayed gratification of having to go and get 2 power cores, I think, props to the developers. I love it. I think it needs to be done more in games. We don't need to get an upgrade immediately after one another, and the fact that there's a little bit of a delay, it makes you think about what you want to use a bit more critically than just throwing the upgrades in. I would like to think, and I don't know what the remake's going to look like because I haven't played it yet as of making this review, but I'd like to have the schematics a bit more randomized in those rooms. Some rooms have absolutely nothing because at the same point, if I'm not getting an upgrade after using 1 power core, I also think that I could go into a secret side room and maybe it's got nothing in it. I don't know. I'm okay with that. Maybe not everyone, but I kind of like the idea. Variety in weapons, we previously talked about it, but there's 8 different weapons themselves. Each one has its own purpose, and that's really it. They're all purposeful. There's variety to them, and they're all unique. They look so cool and so badass. I love it. Sound design. So we're going to cover sound and lighting right now, but this is something that we all know is impactful for Dead Space. You've got the sound design itself makes it unique. You've got pipes moving, necromorphs coming out of vents crackling, things breaking, explosions all over the Ishimura. We know that the remake is going to be iterating on top of this, and the sound itself in Dead Space 1, I mean, it's 2008. It's perfect. It's perfect for 2008. It does exactly what you need to do. You're always scared. Of course, there's some repetition to it as you start playing the game, or if you've replayed the game, but it does exactly what it needs to do. It incites that fear. It gets your blood boiling. You don't know if a necromorph's going to jump out, and I love it. Lighting is an interesting one, and this is something that I didn't realize until I played the game. I actually replayed it twice, but they actually make the game not just really gray, but it's very bright, and you'll see some scenes here, but there's something beautiful about the game being brighter and not just always dark. I mean, the Ishimura is a ship that's alive. It's going to have lighting that does work when you turn on a battery, so you should be able to see the carnage that has happened by the necromorphs. And I think developers sometimes they pigeonhole themselves into, it's a horror game, it needs to be dark. But that's not the case. When they show you the carnage, when they show you what's happened in some of these larger rooms and environments, it adds to the tension, and it truly does keep it, you know, it keeps the tension. That's it. It's great. So you see the blood all over the walls, you see all the engineers and all the crewmates that are gone and dismembered, and it's gritty, it's horrible. But it adds to what, you know, the environment that Isaac's in. It adds to the immersion. So the lighter rooms, I think, was also whether or not it was a limitation of previous systems, I don't know if that's the case, or if it was an intentional design decision. But if it was intentional, great job. Overall, and I think, you know, just to give it, again, just kind of the nostalgia glass, does it hold up in 2023? Absolutely. You don't even need to play the remake. Granted, I'm thinking it's going to be great, so I am going to be playing it. But you could absolutely play this game for $3 and relive the Dead Space experience and be scared shitless. In fact, I think it might even be better to go and play the remake and then replay the original, or play the original and play the remake sequentially right after each other to truly get the best feeling. Scare factor, the game's still a 9 out of 10. I don't think there are not many games that come close to it. And it's the reason behind it is everything that we've mentioned. So summarizing, the combat loop itself builds as you play the game. The level designs go from close quarters to open, but maintain the pacing and trajectory of more enemies, more variety in the enemies, deeper combat loops where you've got the ranged that requires you to be more interactive with your utility belt. All of which adds to the tension in the game, and it's something that without each one of these factors, the game wouldn't be what we remember it to be. If the game only had 5 or 6 enemy types, it would be far too easy to preempt every encounter. If it only had dark rooms, it wouldn't be as scary because you wouldn't know what's happening on the Ishimura, and it wouldn't be right in your face. And if we didn't have choice upgrades, we wouldn't have the extra layer to think about when upgrading or waiting for the treasure room. There were so many beautiful design decisions that were made in this game that I am so excited for the remake, because they're iterating on one of the best foundations of a video game, I think, ever. It's one of those games that is and should be in the Hall of Fame, which I'm pretty sure it is for most people that do survival horror. The game starts, you're scared, enables you with the tools, and it gets you to be faster, better, more enabled as the player. If you like this, please do drop that like or subscribe, drop some comments below. That's it. We'll be throwing up part 2, which is going to be the review for Dead Space Remake. That should hopefully be up in the next few days. But until then, this is Wookie Bandit signing off. Have a good one.